Welcome to the Predicting Success Market Analysis Overview PowerPoint. We put this PowerPoint together to try and provide you with some understanding of what market analysis is, how it can work for your library, and why it's important to take the time to actually do market analysis. Throughout this presentation, we hope what you'll learn is you'll pick up an understanding of the concepts of marketing analysis. You'll be able to identify a market segment. You'll analyze your audience needs. You'll be able to match those needs to the resources that your library can provide. You'll be able to determine the wisest programming opportunities that match the needs of that target audience. And then finally, we'll be able to briefly introduce you to how you might support and promote that different program. The first step to moving forward with a successful marketing campaign is understanding what went wrong in the past. We've all made mistakes. We've all had programming that hasn't been as successful as we might hope. But good market analysis insists that we take a few moments to actually do some auditing of what happened in the past, where problems were, and why we may have failed in the past. In collecting that and actually writing it down, we're in much better stand to more successfully move forward in future programming and to do the type of market analysis that is based on a good history that understands where past successes and failures have been. What is market analysis? Well, market analysis is essentially a study or research designed to define a specific audience or market's needs, to forecast the opportunities and directions that we might want to move in, and to decide how to expand our market share, the library's market share with that audience, and take advantage of new trends and opportunities that are out there. Boiled down, marketing analysis is simply understanding our target audience, understanding ourselves, and understanding the opportunities that are out there to allow us to develop programming that's more in sync with the needs of those different audiences that we're working with. There's 6 steps to market analysis. The first step is simply defining the problem, understanding what your challenge is and what you want to try and achieve. The second step is to do an analysis of the situation. Understand what kind of situation you're in right now, where opportunities are, where different challenges might be, so that you can try and build the most appropriate, you have an appropriate platform to try and build from. The third step is researching and understanding your audience. This is probably the most critical, and we'll spend a good deal of time on it throughout this PowerPoint. Then step 4 is measuring data against the research or the resources, so understanding what you've learned about your audience and trying to weigh it against the types of resources that you have available at your library. The 5th step is fostering ideas and doing some problem solving. This is where the creative part comes in and really trying to understand how you can move forward based on good research that you've established about your audience and your situation, and making some of the decisions about which way to go in your programming. And then finally, the 6th step is promoting your program. While there is a science to market analysis, it's important to understand that data doesn't answer all of our questions. A lot of marketing will be conducted in what we call the gray zone. This is the point where data no longer gives us absolute answers, and where we have to rely on our intuition, our creativity, and our past experiences. We use all of those melded with the research we've done to try and come up with some of the best decisions. But I want you to understand that the gray zone is a reality, and there is times where you may be frustrated because you don't have absolute answers. To some extent, this is what marketing will often have to do. It uses as much research as it can collect, but then it falls back on some of the intuition, the creativity, and certainly the past experiences to try and move forward on all of this. In order to move forward with market analysis, it's essential to understand the challenges that lie ahead. In doing so, you have to define the problem by understanding different elements of what that problem might be. You have to take a look at past experiences. What's worked in the past? What hasn't worked in the past? You need to consider the different needs and expectations that both your library management has, your library staff has, but also that your target audience has for you. From that point, you need to take an honest and solid look at the resources and capacity that your individual library has. What is it that you can do? What kind of resources can you invest in this? And in some cases, you're going to find out that you have limitations, and you need to be respectful of those as you begin your programming decisions. But you also, and we'll talk about this in a future PowerPoint presentation, you can look for partnering opportunities to try and expand that capacity and those resources. And then ultimately, in defining the problem, you really need to fully understand your audience, and you need to understand what their needs are, how you can meet them so that you're helping to move them forward. A great idea is meaningless if the tools aren't in place to properly execute a marketing plan. One of the first things you'll need to do is spend some time looking at your library's resources and its capacity. Consider things like the information you have available. What can you pull down? Libraries have a special opportunity here, and certainly understand how to collect that different information, but it's a critical piece to understand what kind of information you can present and have the capacity to pull together. You'll need to look at your manpower. This can often be the most limiting factor. We have some great ideas, we'd love to do this programming, but it's going to take an enormous amount of manpower. It's something you need to weigh into the equation. Facilities will often be an issue. Do you have enough space? Do you have the right equipment to try and move your program forward so that you'll be successful? If you're going to do a whole program on e-readers, obviously you need enough sample e-readers to help people move all this forward. That's one of the issues around facilities and equipment you'll need to consider. Do you have the expertise? While libraries have remarkable expertise, you have to understand that in some different issues where you're trying to resolve the needs of your target audience, you may not be the one with the expertise, and you need an outsider to come in. Those are things you'll need to weigh and try and decide as you try and make some decisions about your programming opportunities. Finances are another issue that you'll need to give some consideration to. There becomes costs. Costs not only in presenting a program, but in developing the program, in bringing in outside speakers if that's necessary, in bringing in outside resources, and also in promotion of the program. One of the things that we put a heavy concentration on is partners. One thing that no library should try and do is programming in a vacuum. While you may have good information, it's always smart to try and bring in partners who can expand the capacity of your program, who can expand the reach and make the program all the more successful. So partners become an important element in all of this. And there's a whole host of other resources and capacity issues that you need to consider as you're trying to develop your market analysis and think about the programs that are going to best suit the needs of your target audience. Marketing demands that you segment your audiences. It's impossible to successfully market to a wide segment of the population. Instead, select a specific audience, whether it's teens, seniors, moms, businesses, etc. The more specific you are, the more successful and the easier it will be to develop programming that will be successful. Think about things like low income, Spanish-speaking mothers of young children. As you walk through these, you're going to want to think about your audience and try and segment it as specifically as possible. The more successful you are, the more in breaking this down, the more you'll be able to put a frame around this issue and really understand what it is you're getting to. It's important that your program serves your audience first and the library second. To ensure that, you'll need to ask yourself some basic questions. Who is this audience? What do they want? What benefits can our library offer them? When we've identified who this audience is, how do we actually go about reaching out to this audience? What barriers are already in the way? What's the competition that we're going to run into? And please understand that there's always competition. Every single person who comes to your library who you would like to come to the library is living in a very crowded world full of different competitive pressures. Whether it's TV, work, children, sports, there's a whole host of different things that are drawing people away. You need to be able to honestly consider those. And then also you'll need to consider your audience's past experiences, specifically with your library, but also with the programming that you're considering. What kind of experiences have they had in the past, and how do you want to augment those or change those different experiences? it's important to do some real consideration of that audience and spend some time thinking about them, getting inside their shoes, and really remembering that you're there to develop programs that will serve their needs. You can't do that unless you truly understand that audience in the most comprehensive way possible. There's different approaches to understanding your audience and to getting the type of information that will be important to making sure that you fully understand them and that you understand them at a much deeper level so that you can answer those questions about what their specific needs are. One of the most powerful ways of understanding the audience is what we call key informant interviews. With key informant interviews are your opportunity to actually get in front of those people that are working with your target audience on a daily basis. You can set up these interviews. They're usually about 15 minutes long, but they're an opportunity to talk to somebody who works with, say if you're dealing with preteens. This might be a great opportunity to set up an interview with a teacher of preteens and talk to them about the different issues that these preteens are encountering, the different challenges, what's taking up their time. All of the questions we asked in the previous interview, or the previous slide, will be important to bring up into the key informant interview. One of the things that you'll probably find out in doing these key informant interviews is that it provides you with an incredible opportunity to get some real depth and understanding that's much more subjective and not nearly as absolute, but it's the type of thing that provides real texture to you understanding the audience. The other thing that's been enormously powerful for libraries in the past who've done key informant interviews is they almost inevitably open up new partnering opportunities. So if you're talking to a boys and girls club, it may be that they'll want to partner with you in whatever programming you're doing, and that often comes from this initial key informant interview. From the key informant interview, the second thing is to not, while the key informant interviews will talk specifically to people who influence or have influence with your target audience, the second primary piece of research you should consider doing is polling or surveying. And polling or surveying is your opportunity to talk directly with the audience and get some background information about them. Now, polling and surveying has limitations. It needs to be fast, it needs to be convenient, and it needs to be common so that you can pull the information together and get an aggregate understanding of what your target audience is thinking and what kinds of issues they're trying to deal with, what kind of competition they're looking at, and where their needs might be. But you can't do this. Very few people are willing to sit through an exhaustive surveying process. Usually your survey needs to be take no longer than 4 or 5 minutes to complete, but it does give you with some really powerful information and starts to elicit all kinds of new opportunities. The guide that we've put together provides you with a lot more information about the types of surveying questions, and we recommend that you take a closer look at it because that can serve you, and as you start to think about what kinds of questions you might want to ask in the poll, how you can make that polling successful so that it does get filled out. And we do suggest that wherever possible, try and do electronic surveying or polling. The electronic surveying makes it very easy to consolidate the information and look at it, cut it different ways, by gender, by zip code, by age, to try and get a better understanding of what the audience is thinking and how they're trying to address things. Now, that's primary research. It can take a great deal of time. I don't want to deny that, but it is incredibly valuable and powerful in trying to move forward, because if you do not understand this audience and you don't understand some of their needs, you're not going to be successful in developing programs that they're excited about and they want to invest time in. In addition to primary research, some of the easier research to pull together is your secondary research. This is taking a look at the demographics, and it's an opportunity to understand some of the different demographics and existing information that's already out there. Things like population size, the education of the target audience that you've selected, their ethnicity or different ethnicities, what kind of income levels are they at, what kind of interests, and sometimes that's a little bit more challenging under this demographic search, but it sometimes can be elicited. And so hopefully some of this will start to point you in the direction of different partners that you may want to work with, because you'll start to understand where that target audience is concentrating and what kinds of organizations, businesses might be potential partners as you move forward. So those two levels, primary and secondary research, are essential elements of any good market analysis. If you can take the time to do that and give it a fair amount of time, it's going to answer all of the questions, or most of the questions, that you're going to be moving forward on. It sets you up for success. Without that, you're pretty much working just on in that gray zone alone, without having the research to back you up and try and move things forward. Market analysis is all about marketing. It's a tool to help us develop markets, and when we're in commercial marketing, we look at this from a very disciplined perspective. We try and understand what the product is. The product is the item or service that satisfies a consumer or your target audience and meets their specific needs. And we can tailor that product so that it meets their different needs. So if we were talking to them, if we were dealing with, say, tomato juice, it may be that if our target audience was high-income mothers, we may want to make that an organic tomato sauce. So those are how we might adjust the different product to move in that direction. The second one is price. Price is how much a consumer is willing to pay for the product or service that we're offering. Now, when we're dealing with programming, library programming, we have to understand that there is absolutely a price. For most people, leaving their home or their work is a price in itself. If we're asking them to come to an event, if we're asking them to come to our library, to them that's a perceived price, and we have to consider that price as we move forward. The third P of marketing, of the 4 Ps of marketing, is promotion. How do we communicate and garner attention about the product that we're offering, the program that we're developing? How do we make sure people know about it, are excited about it, and are willing to invest in it so that it overcomes that issue of price? And finally, the 4th P is placement. And for most of us, we would think about this as, that can of tomato juice that we're talking about. Would we put it in a grocery store shelf? Would we instead want to put it at Williams-Sonoma on a special marketing shelf because our audience wanted that? Or are we going to look at a food for less as the appropriate placement? In some cases, maybe we only want to sell it via internet because we want to make it very exclusive. We need to think the same way about the programming that we're doing. How do we place it so that it has added value? In some cases, that may mean that we want to do a virtual program because it makes it easier for people. In some cases, it may mean that we want to do this where the audience already is. For instance, if it was low-income mothers, we might want to do it at a First 5 center or something. But all of those collectively are things we need to think about when we're doing our market analysis, because good marketing takes a look at product, at price, promotion, and placement, and makes adjustments to make them as attractive as possible to the different target audience that we're dealing with. So that gives you a quick overview into some of how marketers look at this and how you should look at your own programming in that light, and thinking about how you might be successful in making modifications to the product, the price, the promotion, or the placement so that your programming is as successful as possible. Hopefully this has given you some introduction to market analysis and how powerful of a tool it can be. It does demand that you're going to have to do some work. You'll have to identify the problem and situation that you're looking at. You'll have to do an audit of your own capacity and resources in order to make a program move forward. And you're certainly going to need to expend some energy in understanding and segmenting a specific audience that you want to work with. But when you've done that work, it should open up all kinds of new opportunities and avenues for you to do programming that really meets the needs of your specific target audience. In doing that, you might also find that it opens up doors for new opportunities with different partners who can expand the capacity of your library and become real players in how you move things forward in the future. Future PowerPoint, other PowerPoint presentations, will take a look at how you work with those partners, and a different one on how you promote the programs, because both of those are essential in the success of what you're doing in developing a market analysis that answers questions about the types of programming that should be the most successful for your library. Thank you.